this one little boy that I met, Eduardo. He wasn't like all the rest of the kids. Most of the rest of the kids were very listless, just barely moving. A lot of it had to do with malnutrition and just depression. But this little boy was a little sparkly, and speaking in Spanish, he was like, "Oh, are you American?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm American." And then he said, "Where do you live?" And I said, "I live in Annapolis, Maryland." And he says, "Oh, that's right next to Washington D.C., isn't it?" And I was thinking, "Wow, this little boy is pretty smart." Hello, everyone. This is Padre John, or the Raven's Wings, depending on where you get your social media. About 10 years ago, in 2014, I had the pleasure of being able to go off to stay in Guatemala and do some mission work. Staying in the second largest city known as Quetzaltenango. The indigenous name is Xelahu, and the very central part of Xelahu is called Xelahu, which is the sacred capital of all the Mayan people. And the big cathedral is built over top of the temple that used to be there. And this is sort of the central part of the city. A lot of activity goes there, so it's always a place where you meet people. If you're getting coffee or whatever, you always say, "We'll meet at Parque Central," and that's where you would end up being. And I used to love being in Parque Central, just watching people, watching the young couples and watching the children. And one of the things that was very common to see was both you call them the candy girls and the shoe shine boys, which are called lustres. And the candy girls, basically what ends up happening is you get old enough and your parents will give you a couple boxes of candy, and they teach you that you sell the candy, but you save some of the money so you can buy another box of candy to sell more, but you use a little bit there for food. And it's a pretty dicey life. And the youngest I've seen was a little girl that was left 3 years old to be a candy girl. When I say left, I mean on their own left. The same thing happens with the lustres. And little girls are often beset by disgusting men, and the little boys are often targeted by gangs. But it's a hard life for both of them. I ended up being in Parque Central one day, and one of the lustres came to me and lustre, and I would always hire them. It was 25 cents. Matter of fact, this one little boy that I met, Eduardo, he wasn't like all the rest of the kids. Most of the rest of the kids were very listless, just barely moving. A lot of it had to do with malnutrition and just depression. But this little boy was a little sparkly, and speaking in Spanish, he was like, "Oh, are you American?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm American." And then he said, "Where do you live?" And I said, "I live in Annapolis, Maryland." And he says, "Oh, that's right next to Washington D.C., isn't it?" And I was thinking, "Wow, this little boy is pretty smart." Not sure kids in Maryland would know where Quetzaltenango is. Sort of the same thing. And he was just very smart, very quick-witted too. So I would sometimes be coming into Parque Central and just had my shoes shine, but I would scuff them up a little bit so that Eduardo could get a job doing my shoes for me. And at the end of my stay, I was there saying goodbye to people, and I had been given a large amount of cash by one of my congregants to hand out to the people, and he was very specific about handing it to the people rather than giving it to institutions. And it's something you have to do very carefully because, like I said, a shoe shine was equivalent of 25 cents. If you were to hand a child a $20 bill or a $100 bill, that would make them a target, being beaten or even killed. So that last day I was there, and I was talking to Eduardo, and he was smiling, and I said, "Can I take a picture of you?" And he was like, "Sure," and he was all smiles and smiles, and I realized he was hiding his hands. I said, "What's wrong with your hands?" And he put his hands out in front of him, out like this, and he said, "I'm ashamed. My hands are filthy. I'm just a street trash, basura de la calle." And it's like, "No, you're a fine young man." I said, I praised him for being smart and all that sort of stuff. And when it was all done, I had been planning on giving him a 50 Quetzal bill, which was equivalent to I think around $7.50 at that point in time, $7.50. But that was a lot of money, and so I rolled that bill up inside a piece of paper and handed it to him. I said, "I'm going to hand you something. Put it in your pocket. Look at it later when you're all by yourself." I said, "Don't throw away the piece of paper." And it was the last time I saw Eduardo. But I was friends with the deacon at the cathedral, Roman Catholic deacon, and I went to him and I was like, I really want somebody to, keep an eye out on Eduardo. He's a special little boy. And my friend just said he would keep an eye on him and did take care of him and would let him come in and have places to be safe and to bathe. And Eduardo eventually disappeared. And probably one of the gangs. This was the time when all the kids from Guatemala were coming up by themselves, and it's, what else are you going to do as a kid? You're being told you have to do evil, dangerous things, basically being initiated into a gang, or you get killed. And so his choice was probably like a lot of other kids, just head north, and who knows what happened to him, or he could have ended up being killed because he was resistant to the gangs. And I think about him often. He was such a bright little light in such a place that had such darkness from time to time. But wherever you are, Eduardo, my heart is with you.